We are Straight Facts Only. Hey, YouTube. We are about to react to Patriots Bengals a couple days later. Hope everyone had a Merry Christmas, holiday season, whatever you're celebrating. We hope it was a great one. I'm Mason. There's John. There's Walter. We will record in just a moment, about 15, 20 minutes or so, on the Patriots and Bengals. And I am ready to go if you guys are.
Yep.
All right. Here we are in a 3, 2, 1. Welcome back in, ladies and gentlemen, into the one and only Straight Facts Homie, an NFL TV show coming your way. I'm Mason Souza. There's Walter Spina and John Lyons. As we do first quarter every week, we react to our local team, the New England Patriots. We are live streaming on YouTube as we do every single week. You can join the conversation there. We are also on Facebook, on Twitter, on Vimeo is where all our past videos are found. Again, this is John Lyons, Walter Spina. Thanks for joining us, guys. I hope you had a merry holiday season. Hope everyone watching is having a merry holiday season. With that being said, we have a Patriots game to react to. Walter, let's throw to you right off the top here. Your takeaways. Patriots fall. Not close in the first half. Made it a game in the second half. All in all, it's a loss. Your takeaways from the Patriots as their season comes dwindling near the end of the year.
Yeah, I think the Patriots dug themselves into too deep a hole. Maybe they were digging for coal because they've been so bad at times this season. But in the second half, they decided to try to climb out and make something of it. But I think ultimately, you know, they fall 22-18 to the Bengals. And just in that first half, it was like, what is going on? They were just thoroughly outplayed by the Cincinnati Bengals. Bengals just marching downfield against the defense, scoring touchdowns. And Patriots, I think one of the first things I wrote on my notes was, let's see how many times the Patriots go 3-and-out this game. And they started out with a 3-and-out. You know, I think the first 2 drives were 3-and-out. I think 3 of the first 4 were 3-and-out. They had punted in every drive in the first half, 0 for 4 on third down. They just dug themselves into too deep of a hole where if you're going to try to get into a shootout with the Cincinnati Bengals, never mind trying to come back from 22 points down against them, it's going to be a difficult task. So, you know, they did a good job in turning that around. Whatever was said in the locker room at halftime, whether it was a player or a coach, they bought in. Marcus Jones sparked the comeback with the pick 6. Miscommunication between Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. He returns it back. And I remember watching him return it. He kind of hurdles Joe Burrow, and then he was off to the races there. And I'm like, the Patriots aren't out of this. As bad as they played in the first half, that interception kind of sparked something even in my head, thinking they have a chance to come back. And the defense got to stop again. The offense scored another touchdown. The back shoulder pass to Kendrick Bourne, a name who we've been calling for all season. He had 100 yards on a couple catches and a touchdown. And that's a guy you want to see involved more in the offense. And it stinks that it's taken till week 16 of the season to get this guy involved. As you know, we saw last year, Mac Jones built a good repertoire with him later in the season. So pretty much the takeaway for me is, you know, they played well in the second half. You came up short. You're fighting for your playoff lives. You can't, you know, no moral victories here, as much as maybe a couple games earlier this year we wanted to discuss that. But, you know, 22-18, you dug yourselves into too deep of a hole early, and it was just too tough to come back from.
Yeah, for me, the biggest takeaway is this is another missed opportunity for the Patriots for a win. We can go through it, and I'm sure we will in the offseason, but you look at the Baltimore game, the Green Bay game, or I feel like I talk about this every week, the Minnesota game more recently, and now they have it again. They get completely outplayed in the first half. They're down 22-0 at halftime. Really, they looked abysmal on offense, and defensively, I know they gave up 22 for the game and they had a pick 6. So at the end of the day it was good. But the first half, they gave up 22 points in the first half, including the first 2 drives where the Bengals marched right down the field. So things were looking really bad at halftime. They come out in the second half, as Walter said, they play much better. The Marcus Jones pick 6 was huge. This guy is going to be getting consideration for defensive rookie of the year with all he does in the return game too. But great by him. And then you get a lucky bounce on offense on the 48-yard touchdown catch. You also have one good drive on offense, which to me, Mac Jones's throw to Kendrick Bourne on the 32-yard completion on that touchdown drive might be his best throw of the entire year. It's kind of funny. It's to Kendrick Bourne of all people that we've been talking about all year. And then you get down 22-18. You force a turnover by Jamar Chase of all people. You have the ball inside the 10, goal to go, and you fumble. And I think this is something that we've been talking about all year. They finished 6 for 13 on third down, which looks okay. but they started 0 for 6. Like they couldn't get any traction in the first half. They dug themselves into a hole, a valiant effort to come back. I give them credit, but it's just another missed opportunity for a win.
Yeah, it was definitely exciting if you watch the latter half of the game. But yeah, as you mentioned, total of 70 yards in the first half. Absolutely abysmal, to use that word, John. That's a great word to describe the first half performance from the offense, the defense as well. Something was said at the halftime saying like, hey, at this point, you're all fired. You're all out of job at this point if you don't show some kind of pulse. Kind of what we saw too going into 2021. Like even veterans like Devin McCourty saying like, you perform this way, there will be wholesale changes. It looks like it's trending that way, and they showed some kind of pulse in the second half. Mac Jones throwing deep, connecting with Bourne and Myers, like you said, freak touchdown, but just a little too late. And kind of, John, to reiterate what you're saying, it's a great opening take, and I co-sign. Just a little too late with this team. Like, even if you continue this against the Dolphins and Bills, I guess technically, if we want to talk about technicalities, playoff hopes are still alive. But at the same time, technically, I could become president one day, and that's not going to happen. So the point is, the Patriots, they're just a bad team. And not to do a Trent Dilfer here, but, bad things happen to bad teams. A fumble at the goal line, essentially, with a minute left and a chance to win. Are we really that surprised in the end? Were they really going to come back and win that game? Possibly. I know, John, you were there live in the flesh. That must have been a kick in the gut at the very end, a valiant comeback, as you mentioned. But the point is, you can't be giving the margin of error with this specific Patriots team is next to zero, because you are unfortunately not good enough to come back from the mistakes that you give. 10 penalties, missed PATs. I know it was a windy day. Both Folk and McPherson missed their kicks, missed PATs. Just execution, sketchy play calling again in the first half. It's just over and over. We just keep saying it like a broken record, like the issues of the season-long disaster piece that this has been just continues throughout the holiday season. It's unfortunate, but it is what it is at this point. The Patriots are 6-8, and it's kind of the death march to the offseason, in my opinion.
Yeah, you talk about the margin of error to it. It's essentially zero at this point. It's considering your last two games of the season are against the Miami Dolphins and the Buffalo Bills. Bills obviously running away with the AFC right now, and the Dolphins right now clinging on to that 7th seed. So a big game for both teams. We know that Tua is actually back in concussion protocol, so we'll have to see what his status is for the game this coming weekend. But you've shown signs throughout various games this season. I just want to see it for a full 60 minutes. Give me a full 60-minute game, and not a 60 minutes against, a Cleveland Browns team or a Detroit Lions team. This is your opportunity with zero margin for error to go out there against a Miami Dolphins team who's had your number over the past 3 years and prove to some people out there that you can make something happen. And I know we kind of haven't bought in because of just the way the offense has been run. The defense is kind of at times looked overrated against some better teams and better quarterbacks. Can we start in the first half on Sunday before they kind of stepped up and took on the challenge of slowing down Joe Burrow and that Bengals offense? But yeah, when you talk about the margin of error being zero, it's almost less than zero, because you have to be perfect these next 2 weeks, something these Patriots teams, or this Patriots team, hasn't been this year. And I don't know if I can look at what they've done this year and feel confident about the Patriots and the Dolphins this weekend, or the Patriots with their playoff lives on the line going to Buffalo next week, where even if Buffalo has everything tied up, there was nothing more that they would want to do than to knock the Patriots out of playoff contention. It would just make their fans so much happier. It would almost be like a mini Super Bowl for them. So when you talk about the margin of error being zero, it's more than just zero, because they need to be perfect. And they need to be perfect against division foes who they haven't been good against for the last couple of years.
Yeah, and I think with the Patriots here, as we look at the rest of the season, you could maybe see an opportunity there against Miami. And if Buffalo rests guys to sneak into the playoffs, we're still looking at a team that, with 2 games to go, already has more losses than they did a year ago in the regular season, with the same, if not better, talent across the roster. So that's something that I think, when we talk on the off season, I think that's going to be a big topic for us. Obviously, I think it's going to be a big topic for the Patriots. And you look at this team, right? What have we said all year? The defense is probably good enough to make the playoffs, but the offense isn't, and the special teams makes big mistakes. We saw it again. I mean, the defense played again well enough. Tough first half, but 22 points allowed, and you get a pick 6 of your own. offense took until the fourth quarter to really wake up. And then you had missed kicks on special teams. And I know both teams dealt with that, but it's just been a theme where their offense fails and they have a big special teams mistake. And that's what's seemed to have cost them games over the course of the year. And I think one thing that we really, I don't think we had any doubt about this, but really showed up on Saturday, that mystique of Gillette Stadium and teams showing up already down 7-0, that's over. I mean, the Bengals walked in, they go right down the field, 78 yards on their opening drive, boom, touchdown. They're up 6-0. Patriots go 3-0. This is a point where you could really use a stop by your defense. Boom, Cincinnati 59 yards, touchdown, 12-0. And at that point, it almost felt like the game was over. And I know it was the first quarter. It was like 8 minutes in, but just because of how poorly their offense has played and how great the Cincinnati offense looked at that point in the game. But I think this was a game, and we saw it with the Buffalo game as well a few weeks ago, where that mystique is gone. And I think it's going to take a while, if ever, for the Patriots to get that back.
We're live streaming on YouTube, as we do after every Patriots game for the first quarter specifically. You can find us there. We see some comments. I'll get to you guys in just a second. There's John Lyons, Walter Spina, Mason Souza. Just want to piggyback on that. That's a great point, John. The mystique of Gillette Stadium, of Bill Belichick, that's essentially gone at this point. I know it was gone with Joe Burrow at quarterback. He's slinging it across the yard and getting in the end zone 250 yards in the first half just by himself. But there are some times like I see them going for it on 4th and 1 rather than, pin the Patriots back, and play the field, not give away possessions. I feel like that might be a coaching thing. Like, oh, it's Bill Belichick. That maybe is, I know Cliff Kingsbury was doing that with the Cardinals a couple weeks ago. He wanted to go for it a lot, saying, oh, we can't give the Patriots extra possessions. You could give Patriots extra possessions. You could do it for the last 3 years since Brady left. But besides the point, as I mentioned, we're on YouTube. Let's go to the comments real quick. Shane, as always, Pats versus Dolphins. Only one team can lose. It's a great point because the Dolphins are on a 4-game losing streak and the Patriots have lost 4 of the last 5. So both teams are reeling. Walter, you mentioned Tua and concussion protocol. So that is actually, now that I think about it, a more winnable game than I initially thought in my opening take. Jay Weeze is here. Getting sick of the Mac Jones hate. It's obvious we can't properly judge him this year because of the coaching situation, even though he hasn't handled this whole situation perfectly. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I think that's a good, interesting point because you look in this game, Hunter Henry gets hurt because he runs into Jonnu Smith on a play that, look, either that's drawn up that way or it's not, and it's not being clearly communicated. And why do I say that? Because if you have a receiver or a tight end that once in a while makes a mistake like that, yeah, it's probably on them. But we're seeing every week where receivers are either almost running into each other, or like in this situation with the 2 tight ends actually running into each other, or they're close enough to each other where Mac doesn't have a window to throw. One of them will be at 5 yards. The other one will be right behind him at 8.5 yards. And there's just nowhere to throw, or they seem like they're taking forever to get in their route. So what that tells me is either it's drawn up that way, which is bad, or it's not drawn up that way, which I think is more likely, but it's not being effectively communicated to the guys catching passes, which is a big problem in itself, because I think we all can agree there's no offense out there that's what you want with receivers, their routes bleeding into each other, guys running into each other. And that I think, look, the offensive line hasn't played well and Mac hasn't played well, but part of their issues in the passing game has been Mac will be back there and no one's open. And guys are either running too close to each other, not into the top of their routes yet, and he doesn't have anywhere to go, and the offensive line can only hold up so long. So I think that's a great point by the commenter, because that's something that I think is a big thing they need to address in the offseason. Why are none of their receivers who a year ago got open, found space, none of them are getting open, or at least consistently, I should say. Or they're having these troubles every week.
Yeah, it seems like it's almost like this offense was put in place and the players in the personnel have to run it to the style that it's called, instead of, a good offensive coordinator will kind of build some plays around the personnel. And, this guy may be more talented at this. And you're drawing plays up for Hunter Henry, drawing plays up to free up Kendrick Bourne or, the likes of, Tyquan Thornton downfield. But instead, it almost seems like this whole year has just been, this is what we're doing. This is the offense we're running. These guys are going to be put in these positions and run the play. And you've seen it too many times where Mac Jones drops back to pass. That pocket starts to collapse like for a second and you see Mac Jones get a little timid and bail out of the pocket, or, just take off, roll out to the left, roll out to the right, instead of kind of stepping up into the pocket. And again, I know the offensive line has been bad this year, but again, I just think from a play calling standpoint, to kind of understanding your personnel grouping and trying to draw something up that will free them up and make things a little bit easier for the guys in the offense. It's on, Patricia and the play calling, but also I think with the frustrations and even Mac not just kind of, I know it's tough to kind of buy in this late in the season when you're trying to do things right and kind of follow directions, but you just get so frustrated with how things are going. You just kind of let it flow. So I'll put it kind of 70-30 on Patricia, but Mac Jones isn't innocent in all this, and I think he should be taking his fair share of blame as well.
I agree with that wholeheartedly, Walter. That's a great percentage, 70-30 there, Mac. Like, again, we talked about it like 3 straight weeks now. I'm not sure if he did it in this game. If you guys happen to notice him kind of blowing up with the coaches, it was 3 straight weeks prior to the Cincinnati game this past week, which is, some alarming stuff, just putting his coaches on blast for the world to see. But besides the point, yes, receivers running into themselves is inexcusable. You can maybe do that in Pop Warner, like Walter. I'm sure you have your kids running correct routes, but it seems like in the pros that is room for dismissal. And we'll talk about a coach in the second quarter that was dismissed in just a minute or so. And final question, Jay, again, any chance we see Zappy in the final 2 games, regardless of a Mac injury? And I like this conspiracy over here to potentially prove a point that the play calling isn't as bad as it seemed. A lot of us talked about after the Bears, the Lions, that, wow, all of a sudden the offense looks competent. They're getting open. They what was it, a leak play that like everyone was talking about that got Myers deep for a touchdown against the Bears? Like, why aren't you running that for Mac? So I don't know. At this point, I honestly do not know what Bill's thinking, because it's chess before checkers, right? I don't think, if to answer the question, no, I think Mac is the quarterback the rest of the way. Kind of similar to a Cam Newton situation back in 2020. It's like we're sticking with our guy at this point to show loyalty, and it would just be a bad look if he gets benched again like he did in the Chicago game.
Yeah, I think he's going to stick with Mac Jones, and I think he's already addressed the offensive situation this year when asked about it. He's like, look, we understand the offense hasn't been working out, but we're just going to stick with it. And I think he's going to make the changes in the offseason. Bill's not stupid. He knows that the offense hasn't been working, this season. He's going to make the changes, but he's not a guy that's going to make that change mid-season. You mentioned it, Mason. Well, we all wanted Jarrett Stidham the last couple of weeks of the 2020 season when the Patriots were eliminated from the playoffs, and nope, you got Cam Newton with those last couple of starts. So he's not going to make a move, to Bailey Zappi when, essentially nothing's wrong with Mac Jones. You're still technically fighting for the playoffs. So why make the move to a backup quarterback when your playoff lives are still alive right now? And, with the offensive play calling, you're going to stick with it because you're not going to switch it up with 2 weeks left in the season, because if you do make the playoffs, what are you going to do? Switch up your whole offense for the wild card round? So I think Bill's a guy that likes to kind of stick to things till the end, just run its course, and then once it's over, make your wholesale changes at that point. So I don't think we're going to see Bailey Zappi, barring an injury, at any point for the remainder of the season.
Yeah, I think there's 2 reasons that they're going to stick with Mac Jones. Number one is, if you don't make the playoffs, the most important thing you can get is development out of your younger players between now and the end of the season. And the biggest way to do that is to have them play. And if you're going to be a good team, Mac Jones is the more talented player than Bailey Zappi. So you want development out of him. The other reason, and to me, this was the most significant part of Saturday, even more significant than Santa coming around giving gifts. This was a report by the NFL Network that Bill O'Brien may return to New England after the season to be the offensive coordinator. And I think that right there tells you what the Patriots think is the problem with the offense. Because if they thought Mac Jones was the problem, the report would have been either A, they could go with Zappi, or B, they're going to quote, evaluate Mac the last 2 weeks and maybe make a change or look at first round quarterbacks next year. But that wasn't the report. The report was Bill O'Brien is a strong candidate, and I'm paraphrasing here, to come back to New England, which tells me, whether it's Belichick or Kraft or multiple people, the organization doesn't see Mac as the main problem. Although he hasn't played great, they don't see him as the main problem. So you put those 2 things together, I think you see Mac Jones without question these next 2 weeks.
That's a good point, John. Yeah. And also in that kind of statement or, kind of clarifying the Bill O'Brien situation is that O'Brien gave Saban a 2-year commitment, or it was a 2-year contract, something like that with Alabama, which is why he was not sought out. The names that got brought up in the offseason, Adam Gase, Bill O'Brien. No, we're going to settle with, the coaches that have familiarity with the Patriots, not familiarity with the offense, but besides the point, we've done this for 9 months now. And I'm sure we'll do it again next week. But that's Patriots and Bengals in a nutshell. Patriots fall to 6-8. Thank you for watching live on YouTube. For everybody else, we got to move on to the rest of week 16 in the NFL in the second quarter of Straight Facts Only. Thanks, everybody on YouTube. Talk to you next week.